Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to do an I-cord edge for the one color brioche stitch. I've also put out another video to show you how to do this in the two color brioche stitch. I had previously done this with the fisherman's rib scarf where I put an I-cord edge, and the fisherman's rib, as you know, is very similar to the brioche stitch, has a similar look but is knit up differently. And I got a question about how to do this for the brioche stitch, and I realized I'd never actually done that, so I tried that for both the one color and two color, and I thought I'll put out a video for that. If you've never done brioche before, I would recommend trying out the one color brioche at least, and I've provided a link to that video of mine in the description field, just because brioche when you first start off can be a little bit complicated, but believe me, once you try it, and as I'm sure a lot of my viewers who've tried the stitch and love it will attest, it is really not that difficult. I think putting an I-cord edge really looks pretty. It provides this nice little rounded edge on either side. So it's very smooth and you don't have any of those jaggedy knit edges. And I think it looks very pretty. Now I also have another video where I've shown how to do I-cord edges for just regular knitting, and I've provided a link to that in the description field as well as the pattern for this stitch that I'm going to demonstrate right here. Now I've cast on here 14 stitches. So for the pattern that I'm showing you to do this, you need to have an even number of stitches and then add 3 stitches to the start and 3 stitches to the end. In this case, I have 14 because the first 3 stitches and the last 3 stitches are what's going to make up your brioche or your I-cord edging on either side. Okay. Now with brioche, you've got 1 setup row and a 2 row repeat after that, and it's really simple. So for the setup row, which you only have to do once, the pattern goes, for the first 3 stitches, you're going to do a knit 1, so just a regular knit. Then you're going to bring the yarn to the front or yarn forward and slip, which means insert the needle as if to slip, as if to purl, and just bring it over without doing anything to it. Then you're going to take the yarn back and then you're going to knit the next stitch. So that's your first 3 stitches. Then you're going to do the brioche setup row all the way down to the last 3 stitches. So for the setup row, the pattern goes, you knit the first stitch, then bring the yarn forward and slip the next stitch without doing anything to it. So that's the pattern repeat up to the last 3 stitches. Knit 1 and then slip 1 with yarn forward, or in the pattern, the abbreviation says SL1 WYF. Okay, and now remember, at the end of this, the yarn is in the front. We want it in the front because when we do the next pattern repeat, the knit 1, you'll notice that we're creating that brioche stitch, that little double stitch that forms. Okay, so we want that. So knit 1, bring the yarn to the front and slip 1. And that's the repeat all the way through. So here we go. Knit 1, bring the yarn to the front, slip, and knit 1, bring the yarn to the front and slip. Now I've done that till I've reached the last 3 stitches. The last 3 stitches I'm going to do exactly like the first 3 stitches. So I'm going to knit the first stitch, bring the yarn to the front, slip, take the yarn to the back, and knit. Okay, and that was setup row. Now I'm going to turn my work. And you don't need double pointed needles for the one color brioche stitch. I'm just using here because they're shorter and they're easy for me to use. Now row 1, for the first 3 stitches, you're going to slip the first stitch without doing anything to it. So insert your needle and slip the stitch. Now you're going to take the yarn and take it to the back. Then you're going to knit the next stitch, just a regular knit. And then you're going to bring the yarn to the front and you're going to slip the next stitch without doing anything to it. And then take the yarn to the back. Okay, I know it looks a little bit complicated now, but it's really not that bad once you get going. All right, now until the last 3 stitches, you're just doing the regular brioche stitch row 1. So row 1, you'll notice that we're at this double stitch, this brioche stitch, which we're going to knit. That's called doing a bark, BRK, or a brioche knit. So we're going to go ahead and knit that. So you're going to insert your needle into both loops right here. In brioche, the stitch is considered 1 stitch. So we're just going to knit that stitch. Okay, it's almost similar to doing like a knit 2 together, but we're just knitting that stitch. And then the next one, you do an SL1 WYF, which means bring the yarn to the front and slip the next stitch. Right, slipping the next stitch with the yarn forward. And that's it. Remember, the yarn stays in the front at this point. Don't take the yarn back. You're going to do that repeat all the way to the last 3 stitches. So here we go. A bark, brioche knit, and then slip 1 with the yarn in the front. So bark, and slip and bark and slip. And the yarn is in the front, and we're at the last 3 stitches. At this point, what you want to do is you do want to take this yarn all the way around, okay? Because here's what happens. We need this to become a brioche stitch, right? We need it to become a double stitch. But at this point, if you just leave the yarn in the front and slip this next stitch, you don't form that brioche stitch. So you do have to take the yarn all the way around. And now we're going to slip that first stitch, take the yarn to the back, knit, take the yarn to the front, and slip. And you'll notice that when you end, your yarn is in between these 2 stitches, and that's how you want it, okay? Now we're going to turn the work and do row 2. For row 2, the first 3 stitches and the last 3 stitches work the same way as the setup row. So we're going to knit 1, knit the first stitch, bring the yarn to the front, slip, take the yarn to the back, knit. Bark the first stitch, bring the yarn to the front and slip. So the brioche stitch itself is going to be the same. You're going to bark and slip 1 with the yarn in the front. Bark and slip 1, and one more time, bark and slip 1. And that brings us to the last 3 stitches, which we are going to do the same as the first 3 stitches, knit, slip, knit. Now remember, at the end of this, your yarn is in the front. This time you don't have to take the yarn all the way around. This time you can just leave the yarn in the front, because as you go to knit this, you're creating that double brioche stitch, which is what you want. And then slip, take the yarn to the back and knit. And that's it. Those are the 2 rows that you're going to keep repeating. Now I'm going to do that one more time just so that you can see it. So now I'm back to starting with row 1, not the setup row, but row 1. So row 1 meaning slip, take the yarn to the back, knit, take the yarn to the front, slip, take the yarn to the back. And now we do our bark and our yarn forward slip, bark and slip, bark and slip, getting into a tune here, bark and slip. And now remember that tricky part, you do have to take the yarn all the way around to do this slip, okay? And then yarn back, knit, yarn forward, slip. And you turn your work and you do row 2, and row 2 is where you do knit 1, yarn to the front, slip, yarn to the back, knit, and then bark, slip, bark and slip, and bark and slip, and one more time. And remember, this time you don't need to take the yarn all the way around. You can just do a knit 1, yarn to the front, slip, yarn to the back, knit. And what you might want to do is, if you want to know which row you're on, you can take a little clippy marker like this and clip it to the side where you're doing to row 2, where you're facing row 2, where you're doing the knit, slip, knit at the start, so that you know that when you're on that side, you're doing the knit, slip, knit. Because what happens is the I cord tends to roll on either end. So let me show you in this one here. The I cord tends to roll, right? So the side that you're doing the knit, slip, knit at the start, the roll goes like this. So that's, I kind of consider that the right side, and this would be the wrong side because the roll goes on the other end. Although in terms of looks, it looks almost identical, and so you could really totally consider this reversible. But you can see here that the I cord edge has rolled inward this way. So this side is where we're doing the knit, slip, knit, and then this side is where we're doing the slip, knit, slip. And that's what causes that roll to form on the other side, just in case you're wondering why the difference. And that's how the I cord edge forms. So I hope you give this one a try on your next I cord project, or just for any type of knitting. If you want nice little rounded edges, this pattern works. So thanks for watching again, and happy knitting all.